The Board of Trustees of McAllen Independent School District will be held Monday, June 3rd, 2019, beginning at 4 p.m. in the boardroom, Administration Building of McAllen Independent School District, 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen, Texas. At this meeting, there will be discussion by the board on the items and subject listed below, and we'll go to item number 2, discussion of 2019-2020 budget. Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. President, TEA and Board Policy CE requires districts to prepare a budget of anticipated expenditures and revenues before June 19th and approved by the board by June 30th. Ms. Richards will walk us through the 8th budget workshop for the 1920 budget.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. This evening, we will be discussing updates regarding business operations. We will also have human resources reporting and an update on the instructional services and athletics budgets from the prior budget workshop. One of the first items I would like to discuss tonight is student enrollment. What you have before you is a graph of that decline as we move from year to year. Currently, the drop in student enrollment for 2018-19 was 846 students, and it's projected to drop another 672 students for next budget cycle. The average daily attendance and average daily membership are reflected here. When we're looking at the average daily attendance, for this year, we're seeing an average decline of 659 students, and next year we're projecting another decline of 660 students. But if we look at our original budget from 2018-19, the district did project 21,651 ADA, and that compared to the projection for next year of 20,505, you're going to find that we are projecting a decrease or decline in ADA of 1,146 students. As we move forward, we just wanted to illustrate that as we move into the 1920 budget year, the district has elected not to make any changes to either department allotments or campus allotments, and they will remain the same as they were in 2018-19. Some of the items we'd like to point out are capital outlay projects of $99,000. That is a considerable decline from last year because of the tax ratification projects on there. And we have the facilities and maintenance operations. That is the district's cost-sharing component for those capital investments that we are working with the City of McAllen. And then we've got some GPS monitoring for the buses. And for career and technology, we have some welding projects for ag mechanics and plasma cutters for the engineering classes for a total of $99,000. In addition to that, we just wanted to point out that as of June 30th of 2018, the outstanding balance for the district as it relates to not only our bonded indebtedness but also our maintenance tax notes on there is $83,391,000. We did pay off some principal and interest this year in August of 2018 and February of 2019. So those amounts will decrease as we move forward. The two-year comparison, so we can start looking at what's happening with our budget. Currently, this is based on the 85th legislative session. We're going to find right now that the payroll costs are at 81.58% versus the 79.21% from last year. If we move further down on that slide, we're going to find that we have some non-monetary on-behalf entries that we're required to record as part of the bookkeeping processes for us. If we reduce the payroll cost by that amount, which is a little over $10 million, then we'll find that our payroll costs are projected at 78.31% for this coming year, and they were at 75.44% during the current year. Just some legislative updates. The legislative session did end on May 27th, 2019. The last day the governor can sign or veto a bill will be June 16th, 2019. Legislator goals were to allocate more funding for education by increasing teacher salaries, assist with fast-growing recapture payments, support full-day pre-K for low-income children, and providing funding to the state's neediest students. Legislators would be dictating how 30% of the additional state funding is spent, while the rest of the funding is left to the district's discretion. the district's first priority is to provide compensation for all staff. Although many districts may be experiencing financial growth, the issue is how the state will maintain the same level of funding in the future. And it is advisable that the district budget conservatively.
And you meant financial gain, not growth, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Some of the big items that everybody has been hearing about is the increase in the basic allotment. The legislature did increase the basic allotment from $5,140 to $6,160. That does represent a 20% increase, or $1,020. The one thing I want us to keep in mind as we move forward is that that is not necessarily the increase for McAllen ISD. Because although our basic allotment is $5,140, like all districts within Texas, we did qualify for the cost of education index. That cost of education index was repealed as part of this legislative action. So when we did have our cost of education index factored in, the district was receiving $5,760. So when we compare that $5,760 to the $6,160, that's really a $400 increase, and that represents a 7% increase for the district. So we just need to keep that in mind, that I know a lot of people are thinking that every school district received $1,020, but many districts did not receive $1,020 because of the repeal of the cost of education index. So if we were to compare apples to apples, it's more to like $400 per ADA.
What was ours? I'm sorry.
With the cost of education index, the district was receiving $5,760.
So about $600.
It's $400 versus the $6,160. Okay. The next item we have is the full day pre-K. We are required a full day pre-K program for 4-year-olds with granted funding coming through the early education allotment. So that will be a new allotment for the district, and we will be receiving our funding through that mechanism. And of course, we do have teacher compensation. Districts are required that 30% of the revenue received be used for full-time employees. Out of that 30%, 75% of the revenue must be used for full-time teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarian salaries. And the compensation is for, compensation for 5-year classroom teachers be providing a differential scale for our teachers as we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the pre-K, right under the current year, in the last couple of years, we were allowing for those who qualified full day.
Yes.
So that was a 1.2 million más o menos.
Yes, sir.
So based on this, that money is now back into our budget,
Yeah,
and we're not going to be using that because the state's not going to fund the
Yes,
full
sir.
day for those who qualify.
Yes, sir.
How soon will that take effect? Will it be September 1st?
It'll be September 1st. That is when the TA's fiscal year begins, and they start with their adjustments beginning their fiscal year, which is September 1st.
Has that already been calculated in the discussions we're having today going forward, or we're still waiting for the full discussion on all the elements?
We are still waiting for the full discussions of the full elements, because there's a lot of interpretation that is still occurring. And we're going to find that that's probably the biggest challenge in determining the district's financial impact, because there is a lot of conversation still in terms of interpretations of the language in the bill. So right now what we're using is we are using some projections from Casey and Associates. We looked at what the Legislative Budget Board was predicting, and we're trying to remain conservative with what we're proposing, because we will not have our actual numbers till we come back after July 1st.
And on the teacher compensation, have you begun calculating what that might be? I know you may not be at liberty to give a figure at this point, but are you already working?
Yes, sir, we have. We do have preliminary ranges, and Mr. Miller will be speaking to those tonight. They were not part of your package because we were still working through them over the weekend, but they are preliminary, they are estimates. We still haven't run them fully through our modules, but we're moving that route. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And you will hear a report on that tonight.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other questions?
Yes, thank you. So based on the number you've given us, we're looking at a possible $8 million in additional funding?
Yes, sir. And you've got to keep in mind that there are a lot of moving parts to this calculation because we not only had the cost of education repealed, we also had the high school allotment repealed. So as a result of that, that's about $1.82 million worth of allotment from the high school allotment. And we are supposed to be funding that through the increase of the $6,160 basic allotment. So that's supposed to be coming out of that funding. The other item or the other program that was repealed was the Gifted and Talented program. That probably runs about $500,000. That's all supposed to, of course, districts are still required to provide services for that special population group, and that means that we will be providing for that out of that $6,160 basic allotment figure that we've got. The other big moving part will be state compensatory education. They're changing the methodology in which the state compensatory education program is funded. Currently, it's based on free and reduced meals calculated from data from our child nutrition program. That's now moving to census blocking, also referred to as geocoding. They're going to have 5 blocks on there, and they're going to be weighted. And there's not a determination of how that's going to be rolled out yet. That's still a major, major area under interpretation. At the end of the day, TA will probably have the final say on the recommended language or interpretations of the language of the bill.
Back to my question. Of the $8 million, 75% of that has to be used for compensation.
Yes, sir, of the gain. But all these factors have to go in there to determine what that gain is, because then you compare it to the current year, 18-19, and it'll be the difference between the gain we're seeing out of House Bill 3 versus the current operating expenditures and revenues we're generating this year, and it's the difference between the two. That will determine the gain. And from that gain, we apply 30% of it. And then from that 30% of it, 75% will go to the 4 groups, and the other 25% will go to all other employees.
There's a
So-
test on this.
I know. But we have all those numbers.
Yes, sir, it's a 2 parts.
We have all those numbers, don't we?
No, we don't have all the numbers. Like I said, we don't have, to begin with, we don't have anything for state compensatory. We're doing our geocoding right now, which will be our census blocking. They have not determined exactly how they're going to apply the weights to the boundaries they have to set, because it's like taking the school district and breaking it out into 5 blocks or 5 parcels.
Okay, but we
Then
have a
determining-
range. What
We
that-
have a range of the 2.225, I think,
Okay.
to the, yes, sir. And so then what they're going to do with each block is they're going to determine the percentage of economically disadvantaged and apply one of those rates to them.
Okay.
What those ranges are in terms of what percentage that block has to be, we don't know yet.
Okay, but we have a range in those numbers that we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
And if we plug in those ranges, we can get a high and a low on these numbers, can't we?
We can get a high and we can get a low, and what we're using currently is we are using reports from O'Casey and Associates as they're providing them to districts.
How many numbers do we not have?
We don't have the geocoding, we're pulling out the dyslexia, we're pulling out the CATE numbers, because now they've included the 7th and 8th grade as part of their allotments. And we're trying to, so there are variables out there that we do not have today, or nor are interpretations finalized.
But I think based on the numbers we do have and the ranges that we could apply, we can get a lot closer to a number than just say, we're going to wait till they send us the numbers, can't we?
Well, that's what we're working on right now, but we don't have an in-house number to compare it to as we're working through the template.
Okay.
Mr. President, I have a follow-up question. Would it be fair to say that our conversations we had Friday, those figures that we were discussing are not what we're discussing now? That has
Well,
changed since
that has changed. And of course, the disclaimer with everything we receive is that they are just estimates, because things are changing in terms of interpretations of the bill.
And you made that very clear to us
Yes.
when we were having our committee discussion.
So,
It was all very preliminary.
Right.
And there's still a lot more visits with Mr. Casey's group and others.
Yes. So
That's what we are.
right now, we're trying to remain conservative, and Mr. Miller will be touching on this shortly. The range we're looking at is possibly a $16 million gain for the district. That is what we're looking at right now, and we're trying to be as conservative as possible with that. So that'll be based on 16 million, 30% of that, and then taking the 75 and 25 split.
And as also, as I understand, on the teacher compensation, it's the entire package is weighted. It's not just salary. I mean, if we make any adjustments with any other benefits the teachers have, that's part of that compensation.
Yes, it
as well.
is, and namely the health insurance, yes, sir.
And for the district, that's the.
For the district, yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Just one quick question, Ms. Richards. On the compensation for the teachers, there is a lot of discussion that certain groups will be left out, whether it is, speech pathologists or what have you. Have we identified any groups that are being left out in the potential pay? Everyone's been included?
We are proposing a compensation adjustment for district-wide staff.
Okay, so I guess my question, there were some gaps from the state is identified teachers and librarians, what have you. But we're saying is if someone was not included in that,
We will pull it
Include
out
them.
of our 70% to cover everybody.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Our intention is not to leave any group out or any employees.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, we can move on.
Ms. Richards, you were talking about certain programs that the state is no longer funding. You talked about, for example, the GT program.
Yes, sir.
Does that mean that the guidelines that used to be there are no longer there?
Absolutely. But what they are requiring is that the district certify to the Board of Trustees, one, the continuation of the program. I haven't gone in to read the details on there, but at this point, we're planning to fund them at the same level they would have under the 85th legislature.
But my question now is, can the district alter their own GT program, or does it have to be, if the state's not funding it, are we, and I'm not picking on GT, you just happen to say that, so, I
Right.
mean, there's other programs out there. Does that mean that we get to tailor the program the way we want to do it since we're funding it?
That is probably a question best answered by our director, because they'll know the specifics of the particular requirements for that. Or
Right, no, the mandates are still in place.
Okay, so the mandates, so they're not, they're telling us what to do, but they're not giving us money to
Right.
do it. Just wanted to make that
And
point.
I believe that that's why we're required to certify to the board that we're continuing with the program.
Exactly.
An unfunded program, I say unfunded, but they feel it's funded through the $6,160
Right.
that they've increased the basic allotment from. Yes.
And then just one last question. The last sentence on the five-year classroom teachers, does that mean that anybody 0 from 4 is not required to be in the 75%?
They are required. It's all full-time employees, but what they were asking is that we differentiate pay based on years of experience.
Good.
And we provided a proposal that Mr. Miller will be speaking to shortly.
Perfect.
And our ranges do go from a 0-year teacher all the way to the 20-plus year
Great.
teacher on that proposal that you will hear about shortly.
Perfect. Anyone else?
I think that's your way of saying, go ahead and go to Mr. Miller.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Man, everyone's quiet out there.
Glad to be here, sir.
We're glad you're here, sir.
Thank you. So I'm here to present the HR budget workshop. It's been very interesting past few days, just trying to get some CMAN, we've talked CMAN information. Talked to Mr. O'Hanlon, talked to Mo Casey several times from both those parties. And the numbers have been all over the board, even, hey, when will we know? And it's even been all over the board, some maybe July, August, some latter part of this calendar year. So we're just having to move forward with the best guess we can, like Ms. Richards said, trying to be conservative with our numbers, so.
Where is that? We didn't get that on Friday.
Yeah, she told us.
We just literally just
What?
developed this today, these two slides here.
So is, where, did we get sent it?
No, she mentioned in her presentation. that-
Can you
that
email
was
it to
last
us?
minute. Can you send it to us?
Or give it to me right now so I can have it, and write on it? Can we wait until we all have it?
Okay.
You can go make copies if you like.
And it's just that just 2 pages, I believe, were added
Yeah.
to the.
I don't have any, how many pages is it?
Well, if you want, just continue with the presentation and get in front of us, we'll write notes, and then we'll just put them next to the page.
How many pages is it?
Just two
Two.
slides.
Oh, it's just two
The
slides?
PowerPoint, yes, it was sent on Friday.
Well,
No.
not this PowerPoint, not these two slides, we just.
I don't have any slides on HR. I didn't realize the HR was in this budget workshop today. The only thing I
Yeah,
have,
it was in there. It's
Yes,
5
ma'am, and we
pages.
did send it out on Friday, and we just added these 2 pages today.
Should've been, yeah,
We
two
worked on it
today,
through the
literally
weekend.
today, and then the 3 that from
yeah, I don't have
Friday.
it. Yeah, if someone will just get it to me and then also if I can have it print out, that'd be great.
Okay.
So how many pages is the total?
5 total, 3 should have been in there
So
on
can I have
Friday.
the 5 pages?
I'm sorry.
Can I have the 5
Yes,
pages?
certainly.
So I can write?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I apologize, these 2 here, we're just crunching these numbers today. So we're using the assumption, and that's what it is, assuming a $16 million increase allotment, so 30% of that $16 million equals $4.8 million. 75% of that $4.8 million has to be spent towards teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses. The remaining 25% of that 30 is at 1.2, and that has to go towards all other employees. There's still some interpretation in that bucket, like administrators. It depends what you're reading, who you're reading it from, does administrators include it or not? So, again, there's lots of clarity that needs to be coming down the road for this, so.
And who clarifies that, Mr. Miller?
TEA,
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
Mr. O'Hanlon, everybody in Case has been, I don't know, we're waiting. Even
Okay.
TASB, been talking to everybody who can possibly help us. So just assuming a $16 million increase, I'll walk through that chart there at the bottom. Now, I'm gonna say this, teachers and librarians, that's a flat rate increase, okay? And then on the right-hand side, you'll see nurses and counselors at 2.5% of their current midpoint. So if I'm a 0-year teacher today, my current salary is $47,750. Assuming a $16 million, I won't keep saying that, but they'll see an approximate projected increase of $1,350 to give them a new projected new salary of $49,100. A 0-year teacher today, which moves into a 1-year teacher next year, will be $500 higher than that amount, just for comparison purposes. So it's 103% of the market median for Region 1. That's how to read that chart. So if you're a 10-year teacher, you're at $51,170 today, you should see a projected increase of $2,050, new total of $53,220. 51,000 is Region 1 market, so it's 104%.
But Mr. Miller, in all fairness, the 103%, that's not assuming that everybody else from other districts are also going to go up based on this model.
You're reading my mind, right?
Okay,
Exactly
sorry.
what you're saying. So those numbers are going to change, we know they're going to adjust theirs. They're in the same boat as us, that's a good thing, I guess. If there's any good thing out of this whole confusion is everybody's in the same boat, they're trying to chase down what is that increase allotment number. But I want to say this, these raises or these projected increases, 3.9% of the market median. So last year we did 2.99 for the whole TRE. So this is assuming 16 million, is 3.9%. So trying hard to be competitive. We broke it up in buckets, I call them buckets, excuse me, of 0 to 6 years. I'm sorry, 0 to 5, 6 to 12, 13 to 19, and 20 plus. And kind of with the thinking of, I know the board's been asking for a long time, we need to reward these longevity and these dedicated, loyal teachers. So as you slide to the right of that scale I just mentioned, it goes up by $200 per bucket that you go to the right. So so if you're a 16, or under $16 million, go to the next, well, you see the increase right there. You're going to see $1,350, $1,850, $2,050, $2,250, and $2,450. So if you're a 20-plus year teacher, assuming $16 million, you're going to see a $2,450 increase in your pay. Any questions on this slide before I move on?
Mr. President, if I may, just one point of clarification, Todd, if you will, speak to what if it comes in above 16 million? What if it comes back at 19?
Thank you. So in the board cover that I'm working with Mr. O'Hanlon on, and we've been back and forth on this and on various issues, the district it's going to be in the board cover. The district reserves the right to make future adjustments in compensation. The thing we're being challenged with right now is how do we ensure that those adjustments are included in TRS compensability? So in other words, they're covered in future TRS computations. So, and everybody, again, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody will probably be making adjustments if that number comes in higher. And that's the challenge of what is that number? So we've been real tough. Any questions on this slide? Moving on to the next slide.
Excuse me, Mr. President, real quick. Just to be clear, you have decompressed the remaining teachers that were there was a group that was still needing to be decompressed. And those are being addressed as well here at this time? Or?
Yes, and those are done every year when Townsville comes in and does those things, so. So we're taking these new numbers, it's $16 million numbers here, and rebuilding the salary schedule, the proposed salary schedule, if you will.
Right. And since our fiscal year starts July 1, and other districts start September 1, we may be in a real good spot for about 30 days until they finalize their budgets, right?
Yeah, so the 105, 104% look good until we wake up.
Until they do whatever they're going to do.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So the next slide, just for some numbers, projected costs of the increase by group. We have 1,592 teachers, so it's going to cost us $3.4 million to make these adjustments we're proposing at this time. 33 librarians, you see the cost there. Total increase for those 4 groups, that's the key, those 4 groups, teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses, and that's where you must spend 75% of the 30%, which is $3.4 million. And we're just a little bit over that, I'm sorry, yeah, 3.6, excuse me. So we're $40,000, $40,927 too much, so as long as we meet the minimum, we're fine, we're in compliance, so. And then all other employees is a 2.5% projected compensation increase. So you see the buckets down there I talked about for teachers, years of service, number of employees, projected increase. So you see as you slide from left to right, they'll be compensated more as compared to younger teachers. Average increase for all teachers is $21.50, and same thing with librarians, so.
So on the page before, it says it's a flat rate increase, but then now you're saying it's different amounts for different teachers.
Well, it's a flat rate increase, still, just teachers and librarians, it's always been a flat rate. And the counselors, librarians, is going to be a percent. These are the same numbers here. Let me flip back. See the second column over, third column, excuse me, from the left, projected increase. You'll see those 1850,
Right.
50 right there. So 1850, 2050, 2250, and 2450 as we go from left to right. I just showed it slightly different. So
Right.
up and down is left to right.
And then the percent increase is how much percent did you just?
3.9 for teacher market median for teachers.
Okay, but that's where you're confusing me. You keep saying that we're doing a flat rate for teachers, but then you also say that we're giving, so you're doing a flat rate and you're doing?
No.
That's what I'm
Be
saying.
very clear. So it's a flat rate, those numbers there, but if I was to look at how we compare those numbers to the region market data,
Okay.
3.9%. We did the same thing last
Okay,
year.
but, yeah, kick that out. You're confusing me because you're making me think that we're giving a 3.9% raise, but we're not. We're 3.9% above market median is what you're trying to say, but we're giving a flat rate increase in salary.
Right, yes.
Okay, that's where you got me. Right. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
It's good, it's a great question. I didn't mean to be confusing, but it's
No,
not the intent.
I just, yeah.
Sometimes teachers will ask, well, everybody else got 2.5, what was ours? So just from a simple comparison standpoint.
Okay, you just confused me again.
All right.
So we're not giving a percentage increase.
It's a flat rate increase for teachers and librarians.
And the flat rate, so like,
It's $1.
Depends what range you're in. If you're in
What
the
tier
0
you're
to
in.
5,
Mr. President, if I may, one thing is that every different position, directors have a different midpoint than coordinators, but they have midpoints. So that we give 2.5% of a midpoint, it's going to be different for everybody because everybody's midpoint is different.
right.
But for teachers, since they don't have a midpoint, and we try to do a comparison, we say the median market value to create a midpoint. If they did have a midpoint, we say that's our best guesstimation of what it would be.
Right.
And if that assumption would be true, then it would be a 3.9% raise of the median market value from Laredo to Brownsville up to Hebbronville. And if you took that median market value, it'd be a 3.9% raise. But that's the confusing part, is that
So-
teachers and librarians don't have a
So
midpoint.
not everybody's going to get like a $1,000 raise. So when
Right.
you say you're getting a flat rate, you're not getting a flat rate.
No.
You're
Teachers are.
getting a percentage.
No, you are getting a flat rate. If you're from 0 to 5 years, you're getting 1850. 6 to 12, you're getting 2050. If you're from 13 to 19 years, you're getting 2,250.
Yeah.
I think the confusing part is, just to
median market
clarify,
value is a
is exactly what Debbie was talking about. Let's just, if you fall within the bucket,
Yeah.
that's what you're getting.
Okay.
In the previous year, you're right, it was
It
1,000
was
across the board, or whatever amount it was.
Right.
And this time, because of the statute and how we're required to administer that, especially with 5-year plus, is that they're breaking it into groups. And so,
So the more experience you have as a teacher, the more money you get.
and that's what the statute was intending, that the more experience you get,
We've been trying
Okay,
to do
so
this.
everybody between like 13 and 19 is going to get a 2250?
Yes.
Yes.
But not if you're at 18, you're going to get, okay, because you,
Yeah.
okay.
But
So
all
it's
of
a
them
flat
combined,
rate
you get an
based
average.
on years of service.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
So to Mr. Saldivar's point, he's right, the statute says you must differentiate your increases if you're six or more years teaching.
Right.
Which is great, but this is what we've been wanting to do for probably a long time.
And we stop at 20 years. Anybody after that, that's your, even if you've been here 30 years, 40 years, that's it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a comment, and I appreciate you showing this. Going to this slide where it says number of employees, 0 to 5, 20 plus. I'm assuming y'all, we as a district, your department with Dr. Gonzalez and everybody else kind of came up with how to break it down, right?
Yes, sir.
And it looks great. I think for me, the 0 to 5, first-year teachers are excited about coming to McAllen ISD. I think the draw is not necessarily the money, even though I know that's part of it. I'd like to see a little bit more difference between 0 and 5 to 0 and 6, 12, and or even the 20 years where we gave them a little bit more money than their first year. Because I think the first year, the draw is McAllen, the coming in here, our students, our support staff, and what have you. But, you know, it's almost the same increase as 0 to 5 is 6 to 12. So I was kind of hoping maybe smaller, you know, and again, just one person's opinion, just giving feedback. It looks great. And maybe giving it to the 20, 13, because we're behind. That's where we're behind in the 20 plus. Even though y'all put a lot of effort into it the last couple of years, but it's just one. Again, I'm just 1 out of 7, but just wanted to share that. Other than that, it looks good.
I want to clarify something. When you're saying 0 to 5, it's not years with McAllen ISD, it's years teaching, am I correct?
Teaching service.
Okay.
Right.
I
Well-
understand what you're saying.
But 0 to 5, though, if you've been teaching somewhere else, though, we give them credit, though.
You can pay for the years of teaching.
Oh, is that what that's what you asked? Oh, okay,
Yeah, so
yes.
if I've been at La Jolla 8 years, that's the only place I've ever taught, I'm going to come in at the appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the advantage of that is you want to draw teachers with experience to come to McAllen ISD. You don't just want to fill your vacancies with 0 to 5 year teachers. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you want to incentivize experience, no doubt.
Yes.
So,
I mean, if you were to do like, and again, I just made a comment without a suggestion, so for me, 1,000 would be great for 0 to 5, and then the 850, you add it to 20 years, and then you're almost to 3,000. That's something significant, a little bit more.
I think I have the data there, but I want to make sure that we remain competitive with other local districts starting year teacher salaries from a recruitment standpoint, so that we get them here. And then, of course, we keep them here.
But I would
I
think
think
first-year
we're about
teachers
90
just want to get a job.
Yes, no, I understand. I think right now, TASB says we're about 99% of market median at the 0 year.
0 to 5, so we're a little bit
Yeah, so we're
below.
competitive, we're right there.
Yeah, a
We're
little
probably
below.
where we need to
Where are we in the 20?
96,
We're good, actually.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we closed that gap under
Yeah,
direction
it
of the
used to be
board.
92 or
Yeah, we've
something
been
like that.
Yeah.
At the first budget workshop, I showed this slide that showed the red columns, and we was 92 people at 30-plus years, and we had kind of a bell curve, in that 5 to 15, or maybe close to that.
And if we were going to be under 1, my opinion would be the 0 to 5, not to 20, because that's a lot of experience.
Mr. President, if I may?
For some reason, I didn't have it.
One
So I studied
thing that we were
Sorry.
talking about as we were coming up with these numbers, in looking at the 16 million, again, that's our best guess at this point that we felt was a conservative number. And that's why we wanted to put this out, so that
That's a
y'all
fair
can have an
point.
idea of what we were gonna do. But I did want to point out that although we came in at 16 million, it could be higher.
No, you're right, that's a fair
Right?
point. It's a
So
fair
if we come
point.
in at 19, all of those numbers are going to go up.
Yeah.
We're just saying 16 as a conservative midpoint.
I understand.
Now, one thing to also keep in mind is if for whatever reason it comes in below the 16, then what that means is those are the numbers that we're committing to, and we'll dip into the 70% to make that happen.
I understand. It's a good plan.
That makes sense. And it's at $200 if you look at it across the board for each moving up. So it's very easy to follow what the difference would be.
Yeah, yeah. No, and my point is just a 0.5, maybe $400, or, you know, a bigger jump between 0.5 to 612, and, you know.
Yeah. And I think you were being conservative because we don't know. the
totally
final
understand.
figure. Yeah.
Totally understand.
And not only that, we got to go beyond the biennium year. We don't know what they're going to do
I was gonna say.
after that.
Keep
Right.
it in the fund balance.
Yeah. We don't wanna-
That's
Yeah.
exact conversation we were having, and what we're hoping is that it comes in at a higher rate, and we're able to
Absolutely.
tell
And
staff
save
members
it.
it was gonna be this, exactly. We don't wanna, because some of the questions we were being asked is, well, what about the 70? How far, are we gonna dip back into the 70, and are we? And do you wanna point out what we were gonna look at with regard to dipping into the 70, with regard to the benefits?
Yeah, so the 70%, there's $435,000, Cindy, I think is the number that the district is paying currently for the increased benefit cost. Oh, so the statute, to my understanding, again, it's a lot of interpretation out there, the district could take that as part of these compensation increases. I think at this time we're not looking to do that at this time. And I also want to say real quick, if these numbers go up, we're going to come back and readjust these numbers, but you still have that 75% of the 30 statute requirement, so.
And if I may add to that, what we do have, as you look at those plans, we're already dipping into the 70%, because if you look at the teacher, librarian, counselor, and category, our target is 3.6. Right now, our estimates are coming in at 3.640. So that 927,000 represents what we're currently anticipating to dip into the 70%. The bigger difference has to do with all other employees. When we look at their target or their benchmark, that's 1.2 million. So in order to maintain everybody at the equitable or the same level of the 2.5% increase for all other staff, that's requiring us that will generate an additional cost of 1.468014 in compensation, and the target is 1.2 million there. So that's going to be another increase of $286,014. So when we just look at those two categories there, that's an additional $327,000 that we already understand that is dipping into the 70% on there. As Mr. Salivar mentioned, the bill allows us to incorporate or to include any benefits as part of that 30% in case you fall a little short on that. Just as looking at our health premium, it is going up $11. The employer contribution, not the employee contribution. The employer contribution is going up $11 per month per employee. That's $132 per employee a year. We've estimated that the cost to the district for that component is $435,000. When you add that to the computation, that's almost $762,000. And again, that may be tweaked up with any other benefits we're able to include on there. So right there, we know that part of the 70%, it will be dipped into anywhere between the $762,000 and possibly $1 million.
And we wanted to make sure to dip into the 70 and not take it from the 30, so that we didn't give teachers a bump and then pull money back out. So that's where we're making the sacrifice and dipping into the 70 for our employees.
Plus fringe, the cost of fringes.
Right.
Yes,
I think it's about $1 million, if I remember right.
Right, that's what I went over.
Any other questions on this before I move on to the other?
No, thank you for doing that, because I know that's been ongoing conversations about, especially in the past, it'd be a bump, and then there'd be an increase in the health coverage, and then it all went to that. And so I appreciate the administration taking that into consideration.
On the transition,
In your recommendation.
Mr. Miller, yes, I have a question. I know we're working on numbers that are as assumptions. When will they give us, or when do they project them, giving us a number that may be the final numbers?
we've heard different dates. We've heard August, we've heard as far out as December, and I think O'Hanlon, one conversation was like, it might be early part of next year. So
We will make a final determination on what we consider our in-house projected, because we do want to come to the Board of Trustees no later than the September budget amendment. If we could, as early as August, not sure we'll be there in August, definitely not in July when we come in. But the latest would be the September budget amendment, not only to revise the budget to reflect any changes, but then also come in with any compensation adjustments if the benchmark or the impact on the gate is higher than the 16 million we're projecting. And then we would allocate those out to the employees. That would be the last and final adjustment we would make for the year for employees.
But it wouldn't be a retroactive.
It may be considered a delayed payment.
So it could be an extra check.
Not an extra check. We're looking at the two methodologies. If it were a delayed payment, that means in essence, we would go back to the beginning of your contract period for that increase. If not, it's a possibility that we would pay the difference for the remaining future months. So it would be paid out over the next 10 months versus annualized over the year.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that's based on the assumption that it would be higher than the 16 million we're calculating?
Yes, sir.
What if it's lower? We
That
eat it?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. That will come out of the 70%. That is part of the challenge in trying to come up with a reasonable gain. And right now, we're looking at the 16 with every hope to meet that mark and exceed it, because that would be the good thing, that we met the mark, exceeded it, and then we could adjust everybody upward, and we still keep the 70% intact. That would be the most ideal situation. So.
Thank you.
You spoke a little bit about the 2.5%. I know TASB came down, they looked at our staffing, and we have a lot of outliers, however you say it, not in the teachers and librarians and counselors category, but the other category. If you do a 2.5% all, it's going to continue, that there's going to be disparity, there's going to be a big gap between some people that have either been reassigned, or for some reason they're way outside the norm. Is there looking into anything saying, okay, everyone's getting 2.5% except for this, and this position are way outside, so they're gonna only get, 1% or something? I mean, because you keep giving everyone the same amount of percentage, and that gap's gonna stay. Is there have any kind of talk about that?
That may be something we may want to consider next budget cycle, because we don't anticipate to have this much money to increase moving forward. We probably won't see these type of pay compensation adjustments in the near future. I know at this time, Mr. Miller, I don't believe that we are taking any of that into consideration. We were trying to keep the models clean, especially considering that we are working with an estimated projected increase of the 16. But if you'd like to add anything.
That's right. So TASB in her recommendation was, had salary level adjustment, excuse me. So those will be built into these increases, the 2.5%. So that will help make those adjustments, so we can help the decompression, but it's not addition to the 2.5%.
But what I'm saying is, if you have, somebody already out here, when everybody else in that exact same title is right here, and everybody's getting at that title 2.5% raise, then they all jumped up, and this person is really out of the pocket now.
Okay, so I was in different area. But it's of their midpoint, it's not of their current rate. So if you got somebody, you're talking about if somebody's on the max or very high end of their.
They're beyond it. Someone's out of the pocket, out of the dots, they're beyond it. They're making,
Still on their mid, still based on their mid.
but that's what so it's still based on their mid, but they're still getting the 2.5% of their mid. Their mid is higher than everybody else's mid, so they're constantly.
No, ma'am,
No?
it's not a
It's the same.
personal mid, it's the midpoint within their category.
Oh,
From
the
their pay-
category.
From their pay
Plumber, for
category.
example.
Okay.
They won't.
Okay,
Everybody
thank
gets
you.
the same 2% off of that.
That
mid
category. So that person is.
It's not based on their individual salary.
Okay, so they might get only 1% based
As
on.
a result of them being the outlier, their 2.5% really
Won't be-
represents a smaller percent versus somebody who's below that midpoint. It's a little larger.
Okay, so it is being addressed.
And the
Okay.
point is, or the concept of that is that to bring them all
Shrink it
into
down.
that midpoint area. Yes,
Okay.
The theory behind it is to bring it in.
Okay, I understand now, thank you.
Mr. Vela?
Yes, if it's an $8 million or $9 million bump in compensation, that represents somewhere between 4 and 5% of our current salary. It would be an increase of between 4 and 5% to current salary, right? What's our current salary, 160, 180?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if it's 180, it's approaching 4%. If we bump up, how would that figure be, what would that number be in terms of, what percentage of our total budget, if you add that in?
It's going to go up. As we mentioned on the slide I had, without the TRS on behalf, non-monetary entry that we have for 10 million, it's about 78.55. Another.
That's what it is right now, right?
Right. That's right now, because right now we're actually preparing the budget. I'm glad you mentioned that. Right now, the budget is prepared, and we have it balanced with a zero compensation adjustment. to balance us out.
Okay.
So that slide you saw represented 78.55% of the total cost, payroll to total cost. And I said, and that particular slide was pre-86 legislative information we got, or the passage of it, of HB 3. So in order for us to balance our budget at that time, there was no consideration for any type of pay compensation adjustments. Now that we've got the additional funding and the mandate to compensate staff, we are going, and so that additional 4 should probably get us at about the 80% level, if you're asking that, once we plug in our numbers and we determine exactly where that 2.5% lands, and we do our actual adjustments and run our models. But I'm suspecting it'll be close to 80% at that point. The average now, at one point, the best practice was 80%, and as times have moved forward, that best practice is now in Texas anywhere between 80 to 85%. Payroll cost to total, yes, sir. So, we try to maintain it still at the 80% on there, so.
As the superintendent reminds us, we're being very lean.
We are being very lean.
That's
A lot
at
of
the lower
districts
end.
are already at the 85%, yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
So when we prepare the budget moving forward, I know the question had been asked, are we preparing it on current law or House Bill 3? So it is going to be a combination, because it's going to be current law, because that's the template that we have all our data elements for, and we were able to balance out to. The only component that will be brought forward to the board will be the 30%. And that will be funded, and of course, we'll increase the payroll expenditures and the fringe benefits to that extent. We'll also increase our state funding so that we come in with a balanced budget. But any differentiation in pay compensation and the 70% are the items that we will bring back to the board in August, September for approval. So then we have our entire budget in place at that time.
I think the key to go back to is the first slide and deal with the assumptions. Mr. President, I'm sorry. Because it's kind of small, but we went right into the chart, but those 3 steps are the things we can go over that. And you mentioned again, the 30% of the 16 million equals 4.8 million. And then of the 75% taken from that 30, which is for teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses, which is what the statute provided, is 3.6. But the district feels we should compensate everyone. So that goes to number 3, which is the difference, which 25% of the 30%, which means for all other employees, it equals to $1.2 million in our budget.
And let me
Projected.
clarify that. You're correct on number 1. If our target is that we will receive a gain of 16 million, 30% of that is 4.8 million. The bill
That's the total of the other 2.
Yes, sir, that's the total.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is that we're required, if we go based on their formula, we'd have to at least reflect a 3.6 million pay increase for those 4 categories and a 1.2 million increase for all other employees. We have exceeded the category, I guess, line item 2 by the $40,927, and we exceeded line or row 3 there by that $286,000 mark. So we have gone beyond the benchmark amounts required by the bill.
So we're at what?
And that was to
300
ensure that we remained, we maintained the 2.5% for all other employees.
So it's over 300
It's $327,000.
over.
Yes, and if you include the health of $435,000, that'll give you approximately $762,000.
And that's what the superintendent is recommending at this time, figuring that we should hit 16 million. But if it doesn't, you're still committing to that,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
which means it's going to be actually higher.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
we would be dipping into the 70%. And one of the things that we're looking at right now in the median market value is that the 3.9 that's represented at this point is one of the highest in at least the last 10 years that we've seen with regard to teachers. So it is a substantial raise from what we've seen in our district, and we'll see what our surrounding districts do.
Going to that, I'm sorry, but the other slides that you presented that had, what's it called? business operations budget workshop. On that slide, going to what trustee Vela said about the percentage, last year, the percentage of payroll was 79.21, and you'd said, my notes right now said that you said it wasn't going to be up to 80, but in the slide, it says it's 81, almost 82%.
It is, it certainly is, because that includes our on behalf, TRS on behalf entry that we have to record, which is a little over $10 million. That is a non-monetary entry that we're required to budget for and also record throughout the year. It does not represent any type of cash outflow for the district. It's what I kind of refer to as a book entry. So if we take that component out, then the amount would be 78.31.
But that
And then-
component's always in there, right?
Pardon me?
Is that component always in
We've
there?
been taking it out because it's not a true reflection of a cost that we have control over. It's not in somebody's paycheck. It's not an amount that we're sending to TRS for our employees. It doesn't represent a cash outflow in terms of money leaving the district. It really is just a representation of our liability, the district's portion of the liability of the cost-sharing pension we have for our retired employees.
But what I'm saying is that is always included in all the slides going years back. So it is apples to apples what we're comparing.
On the top
you always
figure,
include
the 81.58 always includes it.
Right, that's fine.
And for informational, we drop it at the bottom of the slide with the 7831.
Right.
So you'll see what it is without it.
Okay.
And that's why it's the 8138, because it's factored in there. It has always been part of that top
Okay.
component. So to Mr. Vela's question was, well, if at the non-monetary, we're at 7831 right now, where would we be with the additional 4.8? And that will get us very close to the 80%
Okay.
on the top.
Okay.
Well, it'll actually bring the top up higher, but the 7831 to 80% without the non-monetary 10
Okay.
million. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Okay. Moving on to staffing guidelines real quick. For elementary school, these are recommended staffing guideline adjustments. Dyslexia, we modified the student-teacher ratio to include dyslexia teachers and dyslexia aides. For example, a teacher, if you have 1 to 12 students, you have 0.5 per campus. Excuse me, if you have 13 to 22, that's a full-time dyslexia teacher. This instructional assistant, we haven't had those. 23 to 33 students equals an extra aide, and 34 plus 2 gives you an extra full-time aide. Down at the bottom, instructional assistant resource media, we changed the requirements for adding an assistant from 700 down to 600 because they're very busy and the contributions they're making in the classrooms. This is elementary level. And of course, change would add a position at Jackson and Seguin. Quickly moving on to middle school, recommended staffing guideline adjustments. Avid, it's not in the current guideline. We want to add it to offset the non-block math sections. Peter Campus, McAllen, currently only approved at Morris. Gear Up Council, we had a new grant at De Leon Middle School this year. Instructional assistant, resource media, change requirement from 750 down to 700. Again, recognizing the work that they do and the support that they bring to the campus. And eliminated from the guidelines the math CSR and RSD counselor at Brown Middle School. High school, real quick, ELA and math CSR, which is Fund 255. We've added that adjusted guidelines to meet the current practice. Science Bridging, Fund 211, added adjusted guidelines to meet current practice. And lastly, eliminated positions no longer in service, which is the girls athletic coordinator, the RSD assistant principal, and English creative writing. Any questions on the staffing guidelines? I have one more slide. You don't have any questions on staffing guidelines? No, I approved of that, sorry. The last police department reclassification proposed, reclassifications are dependent upon availability of funds, of course. Captain, there's one captain currently, it's AM3. AM6 is what we went to task before, and that's because it was comparable, AM6, to the assistant director of FMO. Administration recommends bumping that to AM5, assistant, the position is assistant basically to the chief of police, AM8, plus managing the 19 new officers. So increased duties and responsibilities of those new officers, getting him more competitive, And sergeants, there's 3 of them current, MT10. It was looking to go to AM3, which is to the salary side of the house versus hourly, due to the increased supervisory responsibilities for the new officers. Administration recommends MT11 to recognize the increased duties and responsibilities. Been kind of a, not going to word, quiet year as far as repurpose or reclassification, I'm sorry. Any questions on these? Thank you.
And I know we're coming to the end of our meeting. We did have one more PowerPoint. It was sent to you on Friday. It has to do with the update on the budgets for the instructional services presentation and the athletics budget presentation from the prior budget workshop. It is there for your review. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we will be happy to answer any questions you have on those. And that concludes our presentation.
Any questions from the board?
I move that we adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. I get a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. 5-0. Adjourned at 4:57.
Thank you, sir.